Hi and welcome to Counting Coral Chats. I'm Jolien Collier and I will be your host for today's interview. Here at Counting Coral, we like to reach out and interview people from all walks of life. Some folks are about ocean conservation and others can be marine biologists, scientists, and just your average person doing extraordinary things. Hi and welcome to Counting Coral Chats with Isabel Nunez. Isabel is a marine scientist specialized in coral conservation and restoration. From 2018 to 2019, she was a National Geographic explorer. From 2016 to 2019, she has been a research assistant in coral cryopreservation at the Smithsonian Institution, and she is currently working at the University of Technology in Sydney and has her PhD in coral restoration. Hi, Isabel. How are you today?
Hello. Thank you very much for this invitation, for this opportunity. I'm very good. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to have you. And for those people who are just tuning in and don't know, Isabel was one of the first people I spoke to with regards to planting coral on our sculptures. So she was very gracious enough to spend a little bit of time helping me out, trying to figure out a few ins and outs of planting coral on our sculptures. So I appreciate that, and thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You don't have an Australian accent. Where are you from?
I'm from Spain, but I have double nationality, Nicaraguan and Spanish. But my mom is from Honduras, so I just was born in Nicaragua.
Wow, you're a mixture.
Yeah, so Latin, Spanish, yes.
Yeah, so you're working at the University of Sydney. Could you tell us what your current occupation is and what that entails? What's your job title?
Yeah, I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Technology, Sydney, in the climate change cluster, in the Future Reef program. And I started my PhD last year. I'm halfway right now. And I'm basically looking at different metrics to measure success in the recent efforts, the recent restoration efforts on the Great Barrier Reef. Yes.
Wow, that's a big job.
It is a lot of work, yes.
A large reef, and there's a lot going on, I know that. And you're working on the Opal Reef, correct?
Yeah, I'm working on Opal Reef. However, with this COVID situation, the borders are closed. Yeah. So we went this year in February to do the first campaign of field work. But then we had to come back in May and all these things happened and so borders were closed. And at the moment, funny thing is that people from New South Wales can travel to Queensland. People from Queensland can travel to New South Wales, but people from Sydney cannot travel there because they consider us as a hotspot at the moment. Yeah. Which is not really true because it's going pretty well here, but I understand their concerns, yes. So this means that there's a lot of planning. And at the moment we are planning for a big field campaign next year, the beginning of next year. And it's going to be massive because can you imagine all the people that had to go during the year couldn't? So it's like we are like 10 people with 2 or 3 experiments each. We probably will sleep on the boat, so I'm happy for that.
Everybody's just ready to go. They've got all their projects lined up and all their curriculums ready to go and busy.
It's going to be like a little expedition. I'm looking forward.
No, that sounds fun, and I'm very envious. Yeah. Could you tell us your journey when it comes to tropical corals? How did that come about for you? I mean, was it just something that you'd always dreamt about? I mean, there's a list of stuff that you have done is outstanding. I mean, I could go through it. You have done so much stuff. You've got so many credits behind you. I just listed off a few. But what's that journey for you? How does that look like? What does that look like?
Well, I have to admit that never in my mind coral reefs, tropical corals were like as an objective or something that I wanted to do. I think it's because where I grew up, they weren't there, and you don't have any people around you that work on that. So it is not included in your list of things to do or that you want to do. And then I studied marine biology. And I knew I wanted to do something with in the marine environment and also more about conservation or restorations. But I still didn't know what to do. And then in 2014, I went to the Netherlands to study a master. And with that master, my life changed because I had the opportunity to do my internship in the Bahamas in a large project about restoration of the Acropora palmata through sexual reproduction. And it blew my mind, like it just like, you can imagine like 2-3 boats on in the reef. It's full moon, and you have to wait for the corals to give birth, to release their gametes, and then give the signal, start to collect, bring these gametes on board, do the fertilizations, quickly bring the boat on land, and put the larvae in the tanks, read the larvae, so I say coral babysitter. This is what I become. And and since that moment, I was lucky that I met a friend, a colleague, that a French colleague who encouraged me to continue in coral work because I was full of fears because my God, the story.
Yeah, so could you tell us about your journey with tropical corals? How did that come about for you? I mean, you've obviously come from Europe, and how does that go from Europe to tropics? Could you tell us a bit about that?
I think the corals found me. I think this is what happened. And it's true that there are no tropical corals in where I live or where I'm from Valencia. And I didn't know anyone that was working on this in this field. So I didn't have any reference. And so working with tropical corals or doing restoration was something that never I thought about it. But then I traveled in 2014 to the Netherlands to do a master in aquaculture and resource marine management. And I had the opportunity to do an internship in the Bahamas. And this internship was about a large scale restoration project with Acropora palmata, which is a threatened species in the Caribbean, through sexual reproduction. And this experience really changed my life and what I wanted to do. Because can you imagine, like we were like maybe 15-20 people working on 3 boats in the middle of the night in the Caribbean under the full moon and waiting for the corals to give birth, to release their gametes. And all this moment is like magic, like it only happened like 2-3 times per year. So can you imagine, in a very short window of time. And so I did this experience, and then I decided to continue in this journey. And I had the chance. Well, you also look for the chances, I have to say. Like I would say I'm lucky, but you also need to look for the opportunities. And I had the luck to work in a project of the AIMS, the Australian Institute of Marine Science, and it was a project in the Philippines about assisted evolution, and again, sexual reproduction and long hours work. I love the Filipino team, everything. I learned so much from them. So it was a great experience, very hard as well. I was in a very remote area because people think that you are under a palm tree, all the time when you are in the tropics. And I have to say that no, I was in a very remote island. My neighbors were the monkeys. You are all the time surrounded by work colleagues, so no family, no friends, no partner, no anything. And long shifts, like 12 hours, and but it's rewarding in any case. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that there is an effort as well.
Sounds like an adventure. Sounds like a great adventure.
It was an adventure, and it happened to me that time that my credit cards didn't work. So I spent all my time in the Philippines without cash money. So to put it more challenging, yeah, it was a very intense experience. And what happened after that? This was my master thesis, right? And happened to me that when I was looking for a project for master thesis, I connect with a researcher, Mari Hahedon, which is the mother of the coral cryopreservation. And I asked her if I could do my thesis with her, but at the moment there was a bleaching event in Hawaii, so it was not possible. And she said to me like, well, wait a minute, maybe you can help me at the end of the year in a project in French Polynesia. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm in. So I wait 9 months, like a pregnancy, and for this project to become real. And I contacted her again. And I was lucky that at that moment, my colleague in the UR that I met in the Bahamas was his postdoc. So you never know, right?
Wow.
And so he recommended me, and this is how I traveled to French Polynesia in September 2016. Yes.
And, the tropical environment is beautiful, and I can totally understand why you would get hooked on coral reefs, in the tropics. It's a special place, and there's a magic to those areas. There's something about the colors of the water, the colors of the sky, the colors of the jungle. It's just a completely magical place, especially coming from Europe. It's a bit dull and grim over there sometimes. So I mean, so you kind of specialize in the reproduction of corals. Could you let the viewer know how they reproduce? Because they have two different ways, correct? Like asexual?
The main ones are asexual and sexual. Yeah. And within the sexual one, there are mainly 3. So I work with spawners. So this means, hermaphrodite spawners. So these corals, they release an egg sperm bundle, which is together. And then when this egg sperm bundle reaches the surface, this breaks, and these eggs find sperm from another coral, and the sperm from this coral find eggs from another coral, right? So this is how these ones reproduce. There are others that they are female and male. For example, this fungia that you see, I don't know if you know the fungia coral, that is like a mushroom coral. They are gonochoric. There are males and females, and so they release eggs or sperm separately. And then you have also brooders, which are the mummies, because they develop the larvae inside themselves in their polyps, and they release a competitive larvae that can settle. And so this is the main sexual reproduction systems. And then within asexual, it's the fragmentation. Corals have this capacity to regenerate. You break, a branch breaks, and tissues start to grow and regenerate and heal that area and grow. So, and this is called asexual reproduction.
And that's more how people do restoration. For those people who don't know, a lot of people, they harvest fragments, and then they place those fragments on nurseries that they can, grow up to be larger corals, and then they're placed back out on the reef. Is that correct?
Yeah, the majority of restoration efforts have been, they have focused on the asexual reproduction, because it's something that you can do easily and every day. And working in sexual reproduction, it's you have a very short window, as I say, like 2-3 days, 2-3 times per year, and it's a lot of effort as well, because you need to rear the larvae. And so this is now more than ever, but it's still in its infancy. So
yeah, it's a new field, isn't it, basically? So I mean, asexual coral fragmentation and planting has been around for a very long time, and I think you guys are just now studying all those different ways that we could, essentially seed the oceans to grow more coral in large scale. But it's so in its infancy stages that you guys, you're testing it, but hasn't quite scaled to the level we need to restore the reefs at their current level of die-off.
Yeah, the way I see it, because I have worked in different labs with different techniques. And for me, it's more like a toolbox where everyone is developing a tool that is complementary to the other, because every reef, every situation is different. So this is how I see it. So if there are places that they do asexual fragmentation, totally fine. If they can do sexual reproduction, totally fine. If they, other techniques, for example, will be stabilizing substrates, you know, like putting some underwater structures to stabilize substrate. It's another way of doing restoration. So there are different ways, and for me, they all complement each other, and each size has to be, they have their needs. So certain tools that can work in a site cannot work in another, for example. So this is, for me, they are all part of this toolbox, and we need them to be developed. Yeah, for restoration, but also for research, to know the coral, to know how the biology of the coral, which will help also to the restoration community.
Now, is there a special niche or special interest you have with coral restoration? Speaking of toolboxes, there must be like a specialty that you want to get involved in. Do you have one of those? And could you tell us a bit about that if you have a specialty?
Well, I consider myself a coral babysitter, as I say. So I really enjoy, even it's super exhausting, to when all these coral spawnings and the fertilization of the gamete and rearing the larvae. I really enjoyed these moments, and I did it for a long time. And at the moment, I'm not doing this because I'm working in sexual reproduction, but it's fine. But also, I'm now interested in looking more at the ecosystem services. So how to scale up restoration tools or practices, and see if we can gain these ecosystem services faster than before. So not only survival, growth, and therefore coral cover, I'm also interested in see all this biodiversity enhancement, all this reef accretion, all this benthic diversity that comes back, if how to accelerate this gain of ecosystem services.
Well, it's definitely needed. So I can see that being something that is, definitely an enjoyable field to be able to build out those toolboxes and, scale everything to being a bit more effective than the current state. But what's your opinion on the current state of coral restoration? Do you have any concerns about it? Do you feel optimistic? Because the numbers and statistics are terrifying. It just looks like we're on a downward cycle of coral loss. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think that there is an imperative thing that we have to do, that is reduce CO2 emissions. So this is within the solution. So we need this to happen. So, and at the same time, all these restoration efforts are needed. In my opinion, it should be more investment from the government in these projects. Because, for example, there is investment in my project because it's about research, but what about the people that do only restoration? So in my opinion, should be more investment from the government. It's a responsibility from the government and the citizens to keep these ecosystems. It's not a choice, it's a responsibility. And also I think it should be more collaboration between different restoration experts, but also between different stakeholders. So not only the people that I only hang out with researchers, right? You could hang out also with people from NGO, from citizen people, normal people, like professors, for example, people in the government. So there are different stakeholders that could be involved, putting different kind of or knowledge, expertise, resources, collaborations, contacts, whatever, but probably they can bring something. So this is what I see. Like, I think what we are doing is great, guys. I just think that we need to collaborate more to reach all this vast ecosystem, because it's quite big. So we need to be more collaborative in this sense. and ask the governments to put money in us.
Yeah, I agree with you on a few points there, especially the funding. You know, the research is in. We know how to propagate coral. We just need to scale it. Now, there's a lot of other things we don't know about coral and how to scale those, but we're at a current state of affairs where we can get a lot of work done, but there's no money going in. And the way, you know, a non-profit would get money is through grants. Grant writing is an extremely exhausting process. And it's a gamble whether you get it, and there's no guarantees. So you can waste months on grants, not get any money, and then you can't do the work that you need to do. And yet these scientific bodies are getting funded and kind of overfunded, in my opinion, at this point, because we need to do the good work. And then on the other side of that is, you know, I agree with your sharing of the ideas and branching into different avenues. And from our perspective, we've had a very hard time just getting to speak to people about doing projects, because everyone seems to be a bit close guarded about it. No, this is our project. We don't want anybody else coming in. And then you get the one or two that is like, wow, this is amazing. Yes, let's work together. But I fundamentally agree with what you're saying. There's underfunding, there's under collaborating in the efforts that is needed at this point. 20 years ago, yeah, I could understand that. Right now, we're in a crisis and it's not getting any better. We need to expand.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I saw what you are saying. I saw it in my experience, and it's very sad when you see that certain teams, they don't want to share their, well, I mean, you also have to understand them, right? Because there is, in science, it's about being the first in showing something, and it's a lot of effort behind, long hours, you know, like you don't have almost social life. So there is a big effort, you know. But I believe, I was thinking lately about this, like we need more people. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher, it doesn't matter if you're a kid, it doesn't matter if whatever background, job, whatever you are, you can collaborate in some way. I'm sure about this. Again, I say, as resources, volunteers, ideas, contacts, there are many ways you can collaborate. And I'm an advocate about these collaborations. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. So do you feel optimistic?
I'm an optimistic woman, so it's just in my blood. So yes, I am. I cannot say no. Yes, I am.
So, you know, in your opinion, again, how can citizens contribute to sustainability?
You mean with their habits?
Yeah, just in general. I mean, you know, we are habit-based creatures. You know, we kind of resist change sometimes, and sustainability seems to be the #1 topic on everybody's mind, especially the young people. They're really concerned about it. And older generations, not so much, because they've lived their life. But what's, you know, how do you think people could participate in that?
Well, there are many ways. First, if you want to know, you just can Google it and find many tips and many solutions that you can apply to your life. So for example, I can tell you several. Use, for example, more organic products, right? In your house. When you take a shower, when you clean your house, try to use more eco-friendly products. Also try to reduce the amount, because this publicity always say to you that you have to use huge amounts. And I can tell you, this is very concentrated. These products are very concentrated. So you just need a little bit, not too much. So use less of everything. Then, in my opinion, we have to reduce consumption of everything. Like, people don't realize that when you buy a clothes, or when you buy shoes, or when you buy a material item, there is a lot of energy that was put on producing that product, bringing to your house, you know. And there are things that we really don't need. So why, you know, like you are creating an impact in the environment for things that are not needed. If you really need something, of course, buy it. But if you don't really need it, don't buy it. Reutilize, you know, go to second-hand shops, for example, or learn how to live with less things. Then change diet as well. I know it's hard to not eat meat, but there is a high amount of greenhouse emissions that come from this industry. So if you cannot reduce, you cannot cut the meat, at least try to have a more plant-based diet, for example. Or when you go and eat fish, try to inform yourself which are the sustainable choices in that area. So just, if you really want, the information is there. You just need to Google it. So it's
Yeah,
easy to find.
for those people who don't know, global warming is affecting our oceans. The oceans are warming up, essentially. So what ends up happening is the atmosphere heats up, the oceans absorb those temperatures, and then those ocean temperatures rise, and they essentially kill off coral reefs, because corals have a very small window of temperature changes that they can survive in. And unfortunately, as global warming increases, so does the ocean temperatures. And meat is a huge contributor to that. And to your point about, you know, using less energy products or yet less chemical products, you know, there's factories that are pumping out massive amounts of CO2 and all the transportation that gets there. And the number one key driver on our atmosphere right now, in my opinion, should be shutting down CO2 production immediately and shutting down meat production as much as we possibly can, because we're in a catastrophic downturn in our environment. So yeah, that's great, solid advice. I appreciate you letting people know that too. What type of professions are you looking to connect with when you were talking about, you know, more collaborations and stuff like that?
So, well, any kind of collaboration, because I don't have like as I say, I believe that everyone can bring something to the table, to the idea. So this is something that I believe. But for example, in my case, I'm very interested in island nations. And because I consider islands like the perfect space, you know, because it's delimited to implement an idea and see if it works or not. And because islands are small, it's also easy to communicate, to get the population involved, right? So for example, network between island nations, it will be very interesting for me. Like, for example, in the Pacific, I know there is, it's not called like this. I know there is collaboration in the Caribbean, but not like an island nation collaboration, like from the government point of view. So this kind of collaboration. Then, for example, I also encourage people to contact research universities, research institutes, because you know what, we don't have time. We are very busy. And if you are in the reef and you can do something and we can guide you and find a balance between what you want and what we want, man, we can get the money, maybe we can get the fundings, and you are already there. So, you know, you don't have to worry about how to get the money, how to get the infrastructure. You can, if you're already near a reef and you want to collaborate, just reach people and tell, hey, I'm here and I'm doing this and I think this is interesting. And what do you think? Are you interested in working here? And I can tell you that the majority of collaborations, I'm in Sydney, for example, and my team, my supervisor, he collaborates in the North Great Barrier Reef with tour operators. It's the only way to get to the reef. It's a reef that is 55 kilometers offshore. So can you imagine? I don't have the capacity to be on the reef every day, but they have, and they are valuable witness of what is happening there. So these kind of things I encourage to do. To also, for example, with hotels right now, the hospitality sector, it's more in than ever. In the Caribbean, for example, and also in the Pacific, I saw like many luxury hotels doing a lot for restoration. And you know, they don't have the expertise or the time to focus on coral restoration, but they want to do it. So why you don't approach them and tell them about your idea and how to collaborate? And maybe they can get their funds for you. You don't have to worry about how to finance the activity, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you, especially with the island nations, because since I last spoke to you, we've got 4 locations in Fiji that want our sonar installations. We just landed like a definite confirmed 2 yesterday, actually. And to your point, there's only one person working there that really knows what he's doing. There are some marine biologists that are dotted around, are being hired by these resorts. But I think more and more, to your point, these high-end resorts are going to need biologists to come in and work on these reefs. And it's going to need to be a community of people collaborating and communicating and connecting. I just don't think, again, we're scaling fast enough. And I don't think the ability to scale fast enough is there either. There's no like platforms to be able to work those processes out. So there's like one unified area where hotels could come and marine biologists could post their jobs and people could be hired and, you know, money's being raised. So it poses a good question. Maybe somebody could come up with a nice non-profit to connect everybody through those, you know, island nations and all the people doing the good work on the ground. So yeah, that's a great tip. What type of goals you've got looking forward to your career? Because, you know, I've read all the stuff you've done. Is there anywhere else you can go in your career at this point? You seem to be really at the top of your game. What do you aspire to be in to further your career?
Well, funny thing is that I realized that I'm a person that I'm between science and society. So I probably, so for example, usually you follow a career in you become a researcher, right? And you have, you become the principal investigator and start to write grants and write articles and manage, supervise a huge team of people. But I realized that it's not for me. I'm doing it, and it's very hard and it's very demanding. And I admire the people that is doing that seriously. It's very hard to be a principal investigator. Also, a lot of instability. So I realized that this is not my path. But I wouldn't say I'm going to leave the science. I think what I would like to is be in this interface between science. So I understand them. I know how to design experiments. I know how to implement the experiments, but I don't want to be the one in charge of all the things because it's too much. And at the same time, be in contact with the people, right? The schools, the NGOs, the practitioners, and be in this interface. I think this is where I have to be. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope you get there because we need people like you to do exactly what you're saying. You know, we have some interns and they're 17 years old. They're aspiring, talented young people that are environmentally conscious, working so hard at such a young age to push agendas and raise monies and do all this kind of cool stuff. Is there any advice you could give to young people that might want to get into this field? Is it a tough road for a lot of people? What's the advice you could give to people? I mean, is there a career? There's a career, right? I mean, we've got coral dying off at an alarming rate. If you went into this industry, I think you'd be able to work for the rest of your life, right?
I think so. I remember when I started, people were saying, Isabel, you are crazy. No one works in corals. There is no money for corals. Well, look, it's like 5 years in a row that I don't stop, you know, like it's not true. There is a lot of work. But I have to say the marine biology, the science part, because I'm doing research science and with coral restoration, it's very competitive and very demanding. And so it's a high productivity, you know. So if you are willing to do that, go ahead. But if you don't want to do that, no worries. There are other paths to go to the coral restoration. So you can study or not study, whatever you prefer, and work in an NGO, as I say, work in an environmental department of a company that has the willing to develop these kind of projects, work in communication, documentaries. So there are many ways to be in contact with corals or coral restoration. So you don't have to do a marine biology career. But of course, the more you know, it's better for having conversations, for having ideas. So it's I would say follow your heart. there is no a guideline, and always remember that you can get to that if you want to. So even if it looks like it's very difficult, I can tell you that in my case, my people say, we don't understand how you get there, because I'm a person that had to pay for my studies. Like, it was very hard, and I studied a master when I was old, like 20 years old, and I got a PhD when I was 33. So it's like, I'm not 21, like it is a long path that I had to do, but I'm the proof that it's possible. So you, for sure, you can do it as well.
I think we're both proof of that, because I'm not a marine scientist, I'm not a biologist, and yet I'm working with coral also. There's various different levels of working with coral. It can be just being a volunteer if you're in the tropics and going on a vacation. That could be like the most basic way you could get involved in it. And if you really, really like it, then you could work next to the biologist and, just get that feel for whether you'd want to make that a career move and take it as far as you like, right?
That's it, yeah. And imagine to be all surrounded by marine biologists. What a boring conversation. We need different kind of profiles if we want great ideas, if we want to reach higher. So definitely if you don't have a career in marine biology, no worries. There is a way to get to this.
I agree with you. I've watched webinars and all kinds of stuff, and as soon as the marine biologists start talking, I just fall asleep. I'm like, this is just dull. This is not inspiring to people. You know what I mean? You're doing a webinar to try and encourage people to get into ocean conservation, and yet you're putting them to sleep because there's nothing interesting. However, you're the exception to that rule, because I find you very interesting to talk to, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Well, Isabel, thank you so much for joining us. It's been thoroughly enjoyable, and we thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much for this invitation, this opportunity, and yeah, let's talk together another time.
All right, thanks, Isabel. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Counting Coral relies on public support. If you would like to donate to Counting Coral and help out with the coral crisis, please see the link in the comments section if you are on YouTube, link in the bio if you're on Instagram, link in the post section if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn. The best way to follow us for Counting Coral Chats is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell. When you hit the bell, you will be notified every time we post new content. We are always looking for people to join us in one of our chats. If you are interested in what we do and you would like to be on our show, you can email us at connect@countingcoral.com.